My name is Andreas Wieczorek, and I'm team leader for software test engineering at SBB, Swiss Federal Railways. And as a railway company, of course, everything we do is supposed to be really long-term. So we have software projects that are running longer than some companies do. So currently there's one that's running for over 20 years now and will for another 15. And but even if you can't see it today, what we pictured just 2 years ago is how the future might look like for us as a public transportation. So you will have, of course, flying cars. You will have self-driving cars. There are buses, self-driven buses, of course. There are little transport robots that will bring you your Amazon box or your pizza box. And everything I just told you, all these 4 types of transportation are already commercially available. So the future is here, actually, but because of laws and a lot of tests that have to be done with this, of course, you cannot see it on a nationwide or countrywide scale yet. But we at SBB are working hard to get there, but before I'm talking about the future, let's talk about where we are at right now. So you need to have an IT to support all of this, of course. And as you all might know, you can buy tickets. Of course, you have a mobile app for this, and a web shop, and a B2B interface. But behind all of this, internally at us, there are more than 80 systems, and some of them really large. So we have a developer community internally. More than 250 developers are just developing in this area. And of course, you need a lot of tests, test automation, and so on in this part. We have not only the signs on the trains, in the trains, and on the tracks, the PA announcements and everything, and the push messages on mobile phones. And behind all this are, here again, 80 different systems that are interconnected with each other, and more than 1,000 checks that are running every hour to see if just this display here is working properly. We have the rail control system, which is supposed to be best in class. Well, at least 7 other railway companies are buying it from us. And I was told that we are even doing proof of concept with the Netherlands just right now. And for this too, there are needed more than 200 developers and like 20 testers. And as being in the middle of the Swiss Alps, we have a lot of water resources. And we own 6 power plants, 6 water power plants, and 98% of the electric power that is used on the railway tracks and, of course, in the offices and the train stations is coming from water only. So we are nearly energy neutral. And as these 6 dams were built, of course, by 6 different committees of different companies with 6 totally different data centers behind it, and all of it had to be tested at some point in time. So we could see that it really worked with all the systems around behind it and our central power management. Maybe you've heard the longest railway tunnel just got live about a year ago, the Gotthard base tunnel. And this was built, of course, not by SBB, but by a consortium of companies. And for this alone, we have 3 data centers, or they gave us 3 data centers. And because it's really, there were many, many problems we had in terms of what federal law said, what we had to do for acceptance tests. So these were more than 12,000 pages of paper, sheets of paper with just checks on it to get the formal approval that we could use this officially. And of course, we don't work on paper mostly. We are using digital test management tools. And my boss, over 10 years ago, went for Quality Center at that time. Later it was called HP ALM. And now, as you might know, it's for 2 years now, it's for Micro Focus. And we have more than 150,000 written test cases. And as you might imagine, a lot more test execution logs in there. We have more than 1,000 people trained in using ALM. So that is 120 of us testers, plus the rest is all from business areas for acceptance tests. And we can improve, and for the last 10 years, that we saved a lot of money by using this tool compared to an Excel-based and Word-based solution as test management tool. But of course, we were getting into problems, because when you use a tool, of course, this tool brings its own definition of things with it. ALM is a clear definition of what is a test case, what is a test step. what is a bug and what are certain levels of bugs, like is it medium, is it high, is it critical, and so on. And unfortunately, the tools our developers used had different definitions of these. So as soon as someone was a tester meeting a developer, they were talking about different levels of criticality of a bug. Or I have a test step and it says I have to do this, and after that, and the developer says, no, stop, the test step is totally different thing to me. So what we had were like communication silos building up over the years. And not only this, we had a lot of misunderstandings even through different areas after the reports went out from that tool and so on. And of course, anytime I'm in a project where a colleague from our UX team is involved, he just looks at the UI and says, okay, Andreas, but it's so 2001 from the UX. Can't you use a bit more accurate or tool with the latest inventions of UX? And of course, there was a price tag on it. And with every new project where there were new developers or external developers involved, they were asking, hey, there's so many open source test management tools. Why are you spending just a bit of money, and in our case, such much money on it? Because every project is built to what they really need for tools. So my question was, okay, how can we get away from that? How can we make a bridge to something into the future where people are happy again using test management tools, because you have to use a test management tool at SBB and the projects. Maybe make them happy using it, maybe helping testers and developers connect to each other again in a better way and help them moving forward. Plus, maybe you can even save while having such a solution. Save money by having such a solution. So first thing to do, as you all know, is let's ask all stakeholders. So project leaders, product owners, application managers for operation, teams, everyone that is in a team, developers, architects, testers, business analysts, requirement engineers. And funny thing is, most of them, so 99% exactly, said, Andreas, we want to write and execute test cases, we want to write bug reports and retest them, and of course we want to have reports. And exactly 1%, which is exactly 5 projects, with 5 testers in it, we're using all of the features of ALM. And I was asking myself, why only those 5 and why not the others? And I was asking them, and it turned out all of these 5 testers were external consultants that were actually trainers for ALM, so they really knew where to use these features and where to find them. And unfortunately, from my perspective, in all these at least 8 years they were with us as a company, they didn't manage to bring this knowledge in the teams or in the teams neighboring them. So this was big, from my point of view at least, a big mistake from them. So how to get new software? Of course, you Google. What else would you do? Or visit EuroSTAR events and see the expo area. And but for us, I had a big stakeholder for a new tool that was our tool team that are supporting all our development efforts with more than 160 tools. And they said, we don't want to install new servers. We don't want to buy new database licenses, install new databases with all this authentication, authorization. Maybe it can plug into anything we already have. Backup restore is really important to us. What can we do here? And I said, okay, maybe every development team at us is using Jira. Who is using Jira? Okay, thank you very much. Not bad. So then you know all of this is already integrated into Jira, and you just have to go to the Atlassian store and see what is in there. And we saw more than 40 tools just with the search test management. Then what followed now is classical requirement engineering. You just go to your checklist to see which of my requirements is fulfilled by this tool and which is not. Of course, there are tools that just immediately drop out. And there are tools where I say, oh, I haven't thought about this cool feature, but yes, I definitely want to have this. And you start to add it to your list. And your list gets longer and longer and longer. And after a while, we started this with 30 requirements for a test management tool. And in the end, it had about 80 requirements. And then our list got a lot smaller. So we had only, like 5 on the short list. 2 dropped out. Then we have 3 on our short list. Did a proof of concept, which we had to do because we are federal-owned company. And at the end, we decided to go with Xray because Xray was easy to install. We just clicked on it in the App Store. Yes, so in the App Store, in the PlayStation Store, just say, yes, I want to try out a trial, click, and after a few hours it was installed and ready configured, and we could give it a try on our Jira test environment. Turns out that just a week later we went on production with this, because it was so easy and everyone was just eager to see it. I invited some projects to use it on the test environment and said, why can't I have it on production already? I don't want to test it anymore, I've seen enough. But before you can do this, of course, you have to persuade your bosses, because someone has to pay for this. And at that time, I had no budget for buying new software. So of course, you go ask your bosses. And I asked first my boss's boss, and he said, Andreas, I have no clue what you're talking about with test management tools and things like that. But if I am to invest money for you, I want to have a return of that investment in at least 9 months. And then you will get money for the next year. Okay, that's a requirement I can work with. I can get to that. His deputy was a bit, well, you can make your own picture of him. He just said, okay, Andreas, it is all about the money. Remember, it is all about the money. And then he just turned away and went out. I don't know what you got from this, but I got from this, he didn't really know what he wanted to say, but he wanted to say something like his boss. The third one was my boss, of course, and he said, okay, Andreas, I have to be a bit protective here because we invested a lot to train thousands of our employees. We already have hundreds of thousands of test cases and test logs. And of course, we are saving money, so whatever you do, your investment may not destroy anything of what I have done in the last 10 years. So I was thinking about, okay, how to train everyone, how to migrate all their data, or do I really have to migrate it? And the last one is some kind of manager all of you know, I think. This management by helicopter just dropped in, made a lot of noise, a lot of dust, and when he was away after a while, nothing really changed, and I didn't know what to do with this kind of, was there any requirement at all? I don't know. So we calculated 2 business cases. And the first business case was, of course, the case 0, where nothing changed. We just wanted to stay with the old solution. And the case 1 was we want to go with a new solution. And in the end, it turned out there was a case in between where we really said, okay, we'll stick to the old solution and reduce time by time the number of licenses we have here. So we can, by making here savings, buy this new solution. And then in the end, it turned out it was the way to go where we could save the most of money. But I'll come back to that later, how we did this. And then our collaboration changed, and this was the biggest thing I've not expected. So of course, I wanted that developers and testers work closer together. Of course, I wanted to save money and have a new tool that is easy to use and needs less training efforts than the other two. So when a new team started, a new project started, I was visiting them in their Sprint 0 and introduced them to that new tool, Xray, and said, okay, maybe do not use ALM, just go for it with Xray. And the developers immediately jumped to it because they said, oh, cool, it's in Jira. And the tester said, okay, I don't know yet because it's not ALM, and let's see. And 2 weeks later, I was invited to the review meeting, and then a lot of things already had happened in just 2 weeks. So who of you remembers when you write test cases for someone from business, acceptance test cases, and then you have to do a formal meeting where the business accepts the acceptance test cases, or have to review the acceptance test cases. So I've experienced this many times, and after a while, business is really reluctant to join you in these meetings because they say, oh, no, it's just one of those boring test case review meetings again. I don't want to go there. But it's their test cases in the end, so maybe they should be interested. But what happened here is they started reading the test cases in Jira because they saw, to my requirement I just wrote a week ago, now someone wrote a test case to this. What are they testing with my requirement? Because immediately, of course, in Jira, they get the notification. And not only did they the review by themselves, and of course, a lot of comments, but they started writing test cases by themselves. So from us as testers, we were not only, we did not only have to write test cases, but of course, help the business write good test cases. And then it turns out that they had many ideas about good test cases because, of course, They are doing their business from morning to afternoon, all day and all their life long. And then another thing changed, which happened to me personally. There was a young developer. She was testing on her laptop because in the beginning, the first few months, everything just runs on the developer's laptop, but there was no test environment, no integration environment, nothing. And with this, I needed to test something somewhere, and I said, okay, Ellie, please let me test the software on your laptop. And every day I sat on her laptop for at least 2 hours and tested what they had done the day before or on that day. And the first week she said, Andreas, it makes absolutely no sense what you're testing here. I was, what? Why? Yeah, because you're missing these requirements, you're not testing these functionalities, and you're missing this and that and that. And I was like, no, Ellie, I'm not missing it. I made a thorough analysis of the requirements. I had a test design in my mind. Okay, it's not written somewhere, but I have it in my mind. And now I'm following this outline I wanted to test here. And she said, yeah, okay, just go on, but I don't believe you. And then after 6 weeks, she sat beside me and said, oh, Andreas, what you're doing there, it actually makes sense. And it took me this moment when I realized I, as a tester, have never told them before how I got to my test cases, which methods are behind so that I wouldn't miss a requirement, so I have full requirement coverage. There's not many test cases, but with less test cases. And then some other things changed from business. As you know, in Switzerland, we have 4 official languages, but none of them is English. And in the business, there are many people able to fluently speak every of these 4 languages, but can't understand a single word of English. And 2 years ago, the documentation of Xray was in English only. So we started to translate what is important for them. And I wanted to start the translation and was just Googling in our internal Confluence, is there any help how I should set up a glossary or a translation-based something? And what I found was a comment from Claudia, a colleague of mine. She was from business, and she said, hey guys, I just started translating the first sentence. Could anybody help me? And below that, the first things that you really needed to have for business were already translated, because some people just jumped in and helped her with some paragraphs. And after a while, after some months, now we have everything that we need for business translated in 4 different languages. Next thing that happened is the frequently asked questions section. I started with the most, of course, frequently asked questions I received by mail or when drinking coffee. And I didn't really went down to it and write more than 10 of these FAQs. But here too, after just 4 weeks, it was massive. So everything that everyone had come up with was asking a question there, and someone else would answer. This was just after 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, I got a next invitation to another team. And what they told me was, well, we were using Xray, and we had quite fun of it, and it made a lot of dashboards. And then the team sitting next around of us were asking, what are you using there? It looks quite easy to use. Let's just, can we have it too? And they started helping each other. So what I had in mind regarding that training effort I had to do to train more than 1,000 people, solved itself a bit. Not quite completely, but most of it. They even invented a delegate system so that one in the team would help other teams if they requested help for using Xray. And funniest thing I had was at one time I was invited to a call with the Expanter, the developers of Xray, and I was, why don't I know about this call? Who organized it? And they said, well, we are the Xray experts, and we decided we want to have a call with Xray, and we organized it, and we just wanted to inform you. So what they did here was totally, free. In the beginning, I didn't really like it because I said, hey, I bought the tool, and I brought it into the company, and then I realized, but I'm not the one who's using it, obviously, as they do. So yes, let's go them. Let's have them go their way, and I see where I can support them in any way. The next thing they came up with were dashboards. This is a dashboard we have in Confluence right now. And they created a dashboard template, so you can have a conference page. Just click create with this template, just add your Jira ID for the project, and you have the dashboard ready. So that's okay, it's a few clicks, but it's basically the same thing you can have in the tool we used to have before. And because of its Confluence connected to Jira, you have the results immediately. And then after a few months, we were very happy, and then it reminded me that, oh, okay, my boss's boss, he told me something about return of invest. Oh my God, I didn't quite catch up with this, and let me have a calculation. Where are we standing with the users? And this is what you can see here. The green line is the concurrent user licenses we were using from day to day with ALM. And of course, it is a statistic. You know, statistics can be really wrong or really misinterpreted. This blue line is not concurrent licenses used in Xray. It's projects using Xray. So it can't be really compared, but let's say that in a project, at least there's one using Xray, so maybe there's a bit of comparison. And you know, there was this guy telling me, okay, Andreas, you need to have a return of invest after 9 months. Now I ask you, what would you guess, when did we reach this return of invest? In July, which is here. Anyone else? More to this direction, or later even?
To the left.
To the left. Yeah. It took us only the reduction of 10 licenses to buy a full enterprise-wide license for the other two. So I got to him and said, okay, Stefano, here you see, just after a few weeks, and after saving 10 licenses, we can already afford to have the other two with, at no cost. And currently the picture is looking like this. There are still about 20 colleagues using ALM for reasons like they have the test automation based on this tool, or a lot of other tests included there where they are legally bound to have it in this tool for audit reasons and so on. But yeah, anyway, the rest of the teams have already moved over. So what we experienced was, in the next weeks, further development and collaboration between the people in the teams. Because of what we as testers did was more transparent to everyone else in the whole project process. Started to having more discussions about things, started to having more acceptance of, oh yeah, of course he has another opinion of this, but because of his background. And I totally accept this background. And that was kind of thinking that we never had in the years before. There's one example from my own experience. There was an old host developer. He was a COBOL guru. He is one of those. He said, I don't need testing because I don't make any errors. And he's one of those few who can really say this, and it's true. Then he started to learn Java because it was a Java project. And then, of course, in every planning meeting in our Scrum team, we had 2-week sprints. In every meeting, he was discussing and arguing with me because he never understood why I even existed in that project as a tester in the first place. And we had a lot of fights and a lot of arguments. And then after 8 months, I think, I went into holidays, and after 2 weeks I came back, and they had already had their planning meeting for the next sprint. And I came into and was very curious about, okay, what is with my test tasks? Has anyone thought about my test tasks? And was the estimation correct, or too high or too low? And it turned out that during that planning meeting, at some point, Paolo stood up and said, okay, you know, I'm not agreeing with Andreas, but he's not here, so I'll take his place because I know exactly what he would argue. And that was the point where I think it was the first time I really had a meeting, or a team where I think, okay, this is best performing team. Because we had totally different skills in it, we had totally different opinions in it, but we were open to any discussion and really wanted to learn why the other person is thinking like this. So at SBB, we are in the Agile transformation for 5 years now, and of course, as in most companies, it was a grassroots movement. So it came from the developers. First project we had started with Kanban 12 years ago. So maybe you remember the RCS, the Rail control system on one of the very first slides. They started with Kanban 12 years ago. And for me, agility is not a mindset. It's not a method that you can learn. It's like learning swimming from a book. You can't learn how to swim from a book and then go into the ocean and swim. And so it's like with agility. You really have to experience it a lot of times, maybe months or years. But then as it's into your brain, it's sickering into your brain, then after that, you really start living after this. You really start using it in your day-to-day environment. And from my point of view, the most important thing, even when you're under stress, you will react in a respectful manner and open manner with your colleagues. So agility, from my point of view, is a mindset and not a method. And having said that, when I wrote the presentation, I realized that collaboration, too, is a mindset and not a method. So this is what we experience when just introducing a tool. When you are thinking about introducing a new tool to your company, I think the most important thing is ask yourself the question, is this tool helping us to increase the transparency what each of us is doing, so it will increase the communication between all of us, and so help the collaboration to get better. Thank you.
We have some time left for questions. I don't know, do we have a mic? So we don't have a mic, so if you have a question, you have to speak up. Please.
Thank you for your talk, and I have one question. Did you move your test case from ALM to Xray, and how?
Yes, we moved them. Of course, there were problems, but we can exactly pinpoint those problems. From ALM, you can of course do an Excel export. So you have everything in Excel or CSV files, and from there you can import everything into Xray, and of course other tools too. The problem is with this stuff, ALM does not export. So it does not export the links between test cases and requirements. It does not export the attachments in test cases. So if you have PowerPoints or bigger PDFs or Word documents explaining something as an attachment within a test case, it does not get exported from ALM. You check the ALM file system and database, and it's just a file sitting in there with a big number, and in its internal database, this number is linked to a file name, to a document format, and stuff like this. So maybe you have, if you really rely on test case attachments, you have to write a simple script to write these files out of the database and relink them. For most of our projects, the simple export is enough. And most of them said, OK, we have to rewrite or revalidate our requirements anyway, so we don't need the links between test cases and requirements. But the projects that are still relying on ALM and say we will use it again in the future, or we'll use it in the future and will not migrate to Xray, didn't migrate exactly because of this. There are some projects that use, when you have variations of test cases, you can automatically create them in ALM. And this is something you cannot do with Xray. On the other hand, do you really need to do it? When you want to do a test case with different data variations, you can do a different test run with this in Xray. So, but some do rely on this because they're executing external tests, test automation tools, and giving them the data. So, anyway, that's possible with Xray too. So. Yeah. Zephyr was on our shortlist.
Did everyone get the question?
OK. The question was why Xray and why not Zephyr? Zephyr is another test management tool that's Jira-based. And at the time, we were evaluating these tools. To be honest, Zephyr was on place 2. And there were some reasons why we didn't choose that tool at that time. But it was 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago, there were many features both tools didn't have, which they have now. And at that time, it was perfect for us to go with Xray. what happened to our ALM trainers? Well, they are still with us because they're really good at what they're doing, and in the projects where they are very, very, very valuable resource. So, of course, they are still with us. Yeah. Next question. Yeah.
Are there any concerns with safety critical projects and using Xray?
No, we tried it out. We have some safety critical projects, of course, many of them, and no, there's no. We did have some discussions with our internal audit department how to make sure it can be safe. But as in Xray, it's like in Jira. So any addition, any modification you're doing or anyone is doing is always tracked. So you can always see where you are at and who did what.
I have a question with regards to your integration of the Jira components in Xray. Is it also a possibility to check about Jira dashboards from your potential software building operating partners? Because in the Netherlands we have software building operating partners who work for us and build the software, and we can check that. But it would be handy if we could integrate it in our own dashboard and we see a software building operating partner is with regards to its sprints and delivery.
Yeah.
Do you use that in that case as well?
Not yet, but I know we can do it. We already tried it. We have our internal Jira installation, which can only be reached within our SBB internal network. And of course, we have external partners developing software for us. And they are working on our external Jira and have maybe their Jira connected with ours. And what we will be doing...
So it's on Jira level?
It's on Jira level, yeah. Yeah. Yes?
How about the integration between ALM and Jira?
Yeah. In the years before, we had a Jira bridge, which was synchronizing everything between Jira and ALM. But of course, you have to... Was that your question? Was that your question, the synchronization between ALM and Jira?
I assume that a lot of developers work already in Jira with Bamboo, for instance.
Yeah.
But the defects in ALM or in Jira are different. So,
Yeah.
is there any synchronization that you use between those two?
Okay. So the question was if you are using any synchronization between ALM and Jira for the defects that we can find that we found, and of course we used it was called, I don't know, Jira Bridge or ALM Bridge. It was a tool that's sitting on some of the servers and just synchronizing everything that's been updated. You can tell it if it has to synchronize everything immediately or every 5 seconds or every 5 minutes. And we had a lot of problems there because for a defect to be synchronized to ALM, the user has to be exactly the same in ALM as in Jira. And because we have many internal and external developers coming and going, and the creation of a new user in the SBB environment is really easy with Jira, and ALM still a manual process. So it depends. It has to depend on.
Also, the status of the defect itself, because that's different in ALM than in Jira.
Yes, but we had a mapping for this. So we have projects that do not use the standard flow for defects in Jira or the standard flow for defects in ALM. And for this, you have to do a mapping for each project. Yeah. And this too creates a lot of problems. Yes, please.
Have you used any automation or performance using HP tools with integration with ALM?
Yes.
So how do you do this migration to Jira?
Okay. Have we used some of the HP tools like LoadRunner, UFT, functional testing, and so on with ALM, and how did we migrate this to Jira or Xray? Well, working with LoadRunner was no problem because you could start it from HP ALM, and of course you have the same possibility doing the calls from Maven or Jenkins. So Jira is directly connected with our Maven Jenkins installation, and of course Xray is sitting in Jira. So from Xray you can immediately start any automation outside. And currently we are migrating away from LoadRunner to JMeter, and we have some UFT projects that really did a lot of invest in doing test automation the last years. So they will use UFT in the future, but even there you can use Jenkins and Maven. And so via Jira and Xray you can use this again. Yes, please.
Yeah, you were selecting the tool, and was there any criteria that how it will support your future organization? Was the one like a selecting criteria? Did you look only at the current situation where we are now, what we need for a tooling point of view? Was there something like, okay, for after 5 years our organization will be look like that? So the tool would be like that, and integrations, so on.
Yeah, what I really liked about the tool is that you can have all test cases and requirements and the test logs independently of the project you are working in. So if you are working on, currently we're still working in silos, but we are moving towards a product organization. So I can just slice these parts out of the silo to the projects where they belong to now, and Xray is supporting this. So I can have my own project just for, or technically it's a Jira project where you can make your collection of all test cases or requirements for a certain product and can reuse it from multiple areas. So it's even supporting like a circle organization. Yes?
What are you using for requirements?
For requirements, Jira, Confluence. We were using Enterprise Architect a lot, but moving away from this because you need a bit of time to get how to know it, how to use it. Yeah.
So you have it in Jira as user
Yeah.
stories?
Yeah. Actually, our users or the people from business like Jira because they just sit with us, tell us what they really want to do, and then through workshops, that item in Jira grows and grows and grows, and at a point we say, okay, this is the whole project now, let's stop here and just start developing.